yetu amitapendwa ya vintu ifisume vyonza bula kwibukisha kana depotimo wimbo watemenwa katongi abazunga batita katongi nagula kwibukisha kateka kaibukubuna kapona nenseko syove pamenso yamwaba umebaya iyaba baume iyaba baume
kateka wabantu iyaba baume twakulira lelo twakulira shikakukonke milimo shove Sile leti kume mokulo ndolole abale lilo wingi
iseko wingi mwakwete iseso wingi mwakwete mwaya mwende wino tata wesu
katusi muchi motege wali bomba kale lomba mwatuja tulelilake Sunday, 3rd August 2025. We welcome you to today's broadcast. We are continuing with the Diaspora Forum, the one that we held an inaugural one yesterday with Professor Jones Kasonso. Today we have a special guest, George N. Mutonga. Is an analyst, is a financial analyst, is an economist, is based here in the United States, and is partner to some firms. He will be here to tell us his perspective of the economy. On social media, many of you have noted that he's been a great supporter of the UPND and President Hakainde Hichilema, but he has not shied away from criticism, from criticizing certain policies, acts of corruption, and certain misrule that he sees in a president he loves, in a president that he supports. And we are privileged to host him. Here he's coming on this platform to discuss the state of our economy, where to, and I'll be assisted by my dear brother, co-host Professor Jones Kasonso, who's also been based in the United States for many years. Let me welcome George. Welcome to today's program, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you very much, Professor, for having me.
Professor, good morning, and sorry to wake you very early up, but I'm glad that you managed to join us.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, George, for showing up to our show. I can see that you're wearing nicer glasses than mine, but mine are also golden.
Luchelo once na mibusha fie. Of course, in Zambia it's 20 hours, but I'm glad that on a Sunday, this wonderful day, that you took up time to be with us. The
Thank you.
Zambian economy, if you look at 1964, at the verge of independence, and when we took over, we had wonderful, wealthy reserves. We were a far richer country, GDP per capita, than South Korea, Singapore, Vietnam, China. But now we are, according to the World Bank recent report, we are one of the 6th poorest countries in the world. We are also among the top 10 unequal countries in the world in terms of income inequality. This is very damning. Look where Singapore is. It's now a first world country. Look where South Korea is. Look where China is. China has risen from the bottom to become the 2nd largest economy in the world in a period of 30 years. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? I think I'll spark the debate to George. But before, George, you answer that question, just tell us about yourself. Who is George and why are we hosting you today?
My name is George Mtonga. I've been working in finance, investments for almost 15 years. I have an MBA from Georgia State University. Pretty much everything finance, anything accounting, anything economics, those are the things that I enjoy. I'm in the field. I work in the industry. I'm currently serving as a CFO for a hospitality company, and I'm a managing partner for an asset management firm right here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Were you born in America, or you came to settle in America?
Actually, no, I wasn't born in the USA. I was born in Zambia, in Ndola. I grew up with my grandparents in Masala. My mother and I my mother brought me to the United States when I was around 12. I grew up in New York. I spent half of my life in New York, and then I relocated to Atlanta.
Oh, wonderful. George, I asked that question. If you look at the historical perspective of our country, at 1964, we're a private sector driven economy. The changes Dr. Kaunda engaged in, Mulungushi reforms, material reforms, to Zambianize the economy, to own the economy. And, we became public sector driven economy for almost 30 years. Then in 1991, we went back to an economy driven by the private sector. And here we are. We started as a wealthy country. Now we are among the, worst poorest countries in the world. Where did we go wrong? What is your reflection?
I think it's not necessarily where we went wrong, but it's more the context in which we operated. I think when we say in 1964 we were a better off country, we also have to ask ourselves and say, for who? We had Black Zambians living a very limited life around that time. So yes, the reserves can be high if Black Zambians are not getting the health they need. The reserves can be high if the education prospects of Black Zambians are not there. I think that was a white economy. Those reserves reflected a very minority group of individuals. And it's sort of, when you come from a system where the government was not necessarily doing a lot of public good for citizens, there's this desire to almost be socialist. In fact, if you look at the campaign before the elections and how President Kaunda was presenting himself to the country, I think it was inevitable for the government to say, hey, I'm going to lead progress. I'm going to give you guys health. I'm going to give you guys education. That transition from a colonial country to a country where people needed more from their country, from their government, I think it was inevitable. Not necessarily saying that, as a liberal economist, I've always felt the private sector is a better path for development. So, but I don't think I would have done differently to what Kaunda did. It was just an inevitable reality for us to approach government like that. But equally, it was inevitable for the private sector to come in, because as government becomes the force in the economy, eventually a lot of freedoms get lost. And 1991 was the reality of what we were going through under Kaunda. And it was inevitable. And I've always felt that the transitions in Zambian's history are inevitable and they are correct for that time. We have the vantage point of looking at them and saying, well, something went wrong. Yes, we are judging history based on what we are seeing now, but I don't think we would have done things differently at that particular time. Now, the question is, I think we have every right to judge whether we've been successful or not. So whether we took the Kaunda path or we took the Chiluba path, have we been successful? And I would align President Hakainde Hichilema along the Chiluba type of ideology. And I think it's legitimate for us to say, okay, have we used government to achieve what we need to achieve for the Zambian people?
The country has been dependent on copper, export driven up to 70-80% the entire time, I think, of our life as Zambia in the last 61 years. Copper appears to be a gift to our country, where we've drawn immense resources to develop our country. But it also appears to have been a curse, because we have not diversified our economy. We have not ventured elsewhere. Copper remains a dominant contributor to our economy and our exports. Could the way we've handled the copper resource be also a contributing factor when you are relying on one item? Well, it's all good when it's rising, and it's all bad and depression when the prices collapse. What's your reflection there?
I think Professor Kasoso would even fire me if I was working as a CFO for a company where over the last 64 or 50 years, the 70% of my revenue is coming from one service sector within the company. I just don't see how that's sustainable. The risks associated with that exposure are just too much. Yes, it is a gift, but at the same time, it's a curse. And the reason why I say that it's a curse is because you have to understand the P&L of what copper and mining does. On paper, we can say we've produced, 800,000 tons, and we've exported it. But how is the financial flow? Because if I take products outside Zambia, I settle all the money related to those transactions and selling what I'm taking out of Zambia. Every settlement is outside the country. The professor will agree to this. It means that the money that's associated with copper is not even in our banking system to provide loans, to provide support to the economy. When you look at the money that's actually operating within our economy, it's generally from these businesses that just operate in Zambia. But when you look at the mining sector, and I think President Michael had to try to change some of this, but he failed miserably, and not because of his own problems, but because of investors. Global investors just never wanted to settle their transactions on copper in Zambia, and that has been a problem. We have all these pronouncements about jobs and everything. No, the value is in selling something and making the settlement of those transactions in local banks in Zambia, leaving the money in Zambia, because that now supports our economy. From the looks of things, when I think of copper, I do not really think, mathematically speaking, even if we did 1.5 million, like in terms of copper production, we may increase some jobs, but the actual true value of that money being settled outside as opposed to being settled in Zambia will always remain. So whenever there are pronouncements about copper, excuse me, and when I look at the P&L, and I'm just like, might as well not be selling, might as well not be having the copper in Zambia, because the true value of it is practically non-existent, like what I would consider value. And for me, it is the settlement. It is the settlement of revenues. It is the settlement of vendors. Every structure of that P&L should exist in Zambia. But what happens, Ambassador, is that they
George,
sell.
you are speaking to people from Masala. When you are saying BNL, what does that mean?
Oh, sorry. So the profit and loss statements. So what happens, like your revenues versus expenses, that P&L structure, Ambassador, all I'm arguing, and the professor I think would agree to this, as long as the money, revenue coming in is being settled in Europe, the only thing that's coming to Zambia is when these guys are paying taxes or they are paying for their expenses in Zambia. And that may be 30% of $1 billion, meaning the value of our copper is $1 billion on the market. The money that comes in Zambia and circulates in Zambia may be 30% of that 1 billion. Everything else goes to wherever these subsidiaries are. And that's always been the problem. So beyond the existence of copper, how we structure these transactions has always been problematic to me. I feel that even if copper production was even at levels of 600, right? 600,000, if the true network ecosystem of the mining industry operated, settled transaction in Zambia, I think we will be better off.
Wonderful. Let me bring in Professor Kasonso. You are my co-host, but look, you are an academic. You also follow the issues around our mother country. My very questions that I threw to George, let me have your reflections where we are. And after your answers, we now delve into the current state of the economy. What is President Hakainde Hichilema doing right? What is he doing wrong? How can we go better? But first, give your reflections, Professor.
I want to give credit to George. He has done a tremendous job speaking about some issues that have gone right and some issues that have gone wrong. Our complete dependence on copper, with the copper that is no longer in our hands. And he also has a correct view on the aspect of the cash flows. The cash flows from the copper business, it's just not sustainable. It's not useful to the country. You know, you go on the exports, you show the amount that we've exported, and the cash that you're having back in the country is not
not to cut you there, Professor, you are right. Let's take, for example, copper exports in the last 4-5 years. They average around between $6 to $8 billion a year, but their contribution to the country, to the revenues, is just under $400 million.
Yeah, that's the problem we have. So it's the problem that my president Hakainde Hichilema calls revenue. Yeah, so the revenues that we are getting from there are not constructive. So we have to find a different way of dealing with the copper industry. Either, you know, it's a very treacherous industry. I must mention this to you. If the government goes in by force, those are the same forces that will betray them in the global economy, and they will have nowhere to sell the copper. Let's say we take those mines from them. So, but I believe, as an applied economist, I believe in incremental change. If we are getting only 400 million, we can say, okay, let's start getting 700 million, not $1 billion. So we just tweak the rules and we negotiate with those guys. That is one way we can do it. Yeah. And secondly, I want to talk about our inability to generate. It's like we're a beautiful but lazy country. We are a rich but poor country. There are other things that we can do within the economy beyond copper. You know, the difference between, in 2023, the difference between our imports and exports was about $1 billion in favor of exports. And those exports, we don't get a cut. We don't get a good cut out of it. So we are a heavily import-based economy, and it is not normal. What we need to do in that economy differently from what Kaunda, Chiloba did, and the other people. I started reading the economy when I was 16, and that's about the time when Chiloba took over government. So the other things that were happening before, I only read about them in books. But I want to make sure that we have the correct understanding of what is going on in our country today. And what is going on in our country today is simply that we are a lazy country. We are not working to put stuff in the global economy so that we can return some money to ourselves. That's one. That's why even yesterday I told you, Mwamba, I have always said this on every platform. What we need to do in the Republic of Zambia is to restructure the economy, reorganize our financial base, and reinvigorate our wealth creation capacity at personal level, family level, and country level, so that our people can keep more of what they're earning from the global economy. That's what we need to be doing. And unfortunately, we are being led today by an economist. I'll put him in the commas because the only degree HH has in economics or something like that is a bachelor's degree. So I'll put him as an economist.
Prof, we don't seem to have learned, for example, what Chile and Peru have done with the same resource. There are developments in the Congo that may surprise you, how DRC has come from the bottom to become the biggest copper producer, is now sitting at number 2 with almost 3.2 million metric tons per year. But there's an issue, is that the local institutions are unable to extract, despite those huge numbers, are unable to extract revenue for the country. First of all, the government of the day who give these unnecessary incentives, in many times criminal investment, criminal incentives. Then institutions like ZRA don't seem to have a capacity to even get minimum revenue from the mines, because the mines are engaged in tax evasion, very, very technical aspect. If you read how, for example, the 2013 report showed that Zambia was losing up to $3 billion of income from these mining companies through tax evasion and illicit financial flows. At least they went into detail. For example, they would insist on exporting concentrates, because that way the value of gold, the value of cobalt may not be declared. And so the money is robbed through technical means like that, where smelting is not done locally. Even when you impose an export tax, they somehow find a way to reach a minister of finance and president to scrap off those export taxes. So one of the issues also, I think, is technically we don't seem to have capacity. George, I want you to speak to this. You as a financial analyst and expert, we don't seem to have capacity to detect these evasion tactics, tax evasion tactics.
And I think, as Professor was saying, the issue is the dominance of copper in our economy. I think the general standard ZRA employee right out of UNZA knows how to calculate those taxes. They can fetch those taxes. But if the powers that be are preventing me from doing my job, guess what? I'm going to bypass that. We have very intelligent analysts, tax professionals in Zambia. I will give that to them. But the dominance, because think of how the tax reality is treated for the mines versus the tax reality of JM Enterprise, the guy that's selling equipment. They will get the money they need because J Enterprise doesn't have the level of power that the mining sector has. So I don't question our capability to collect taxes. That process and the technology, I think we have. What the reality is in Zambia is that the mining industry is extremely powerful. We are dependent on it, or to an extent, we feel we are dependent on it. This is why if the powers that be were not in charge of this process and you brought in anybody from the University of Zambia, anybody, they will create a tax regime that is beneficial to the country. But not only do you have global investors influencing our industry, you also have, and I know we're going to talk about income inequality, but you also have a certain section of our population that are in certain classes that are participating in these schemes, in the idea of robbing the country by protecting this mining industry. If you look at these same guys in the United States, the mining industry in the USA, if they are operating in countries where they know they can be kicked out and they can lose value, guess what? When you look at their taxes on their P&L, everything is paid. Everything is compliant. They pay everything without any issue. You've never heard of any commodity company operating out of Europe or operating out of China or operating out of the United States having issues with taxes. They only have these types of issues in Africa. Why? Because they understand the power that they have. And it speaks to our own dependency. Even when we're negotiating these deals, we're not necessarily negotiating. They are out there telling us what to do. So it is problematic. I don't know how to fix it, but an element of it is that dependency. If we were not too dependent on copper, I think we can muscle through and create a regime that's actually beneficial for the country. But the fact is that we are dependent. And if I was on the other side, Ambassador, as a CFO, my goal is to lower taxes, is to lower my tax burden for my company. I would be doing the same things that they are doing. The only reason why I would be compliant is if the government gives me the penalties. If the government finds that I'm evading taxes or I'm creating whatever I need to create to avoid, I think they call it tax avoidance as opposed to tax evasion. A tax evasion is illegal. Tax avoidance is pretty much creating all these complex legal structures to avoid paying taxes. We engage in that. It is part of our professional responsibility to our organizations to pursue those strategies. The only way we are prevented from pursuing those strategies if the law is laid out. You can't do A, B, C, D because they know I can easily take money out of Zambia by paying a vendor in the United States, and that vendor is 100% owned by the mining company in Canada. Those things are obvious. We just don't have the power to address them in Zambia.
Thank you. I think we now narrowed down to the current state of our economy and its prospects in the future. When President Hakainde Hichilema was campaigning, he was very clear. He said the debt burden was extremely high. He said he would put a moratorium on debt, that his government would not accumulate any new debt because the Patriotic Front had borrowed excessively. He said he was going to stop leakages such as corruption, such as institutions and entities not paying adequate and fair taxes, and he was going to create this robust issue. And then there's another big issue why citizens are very disappointed with him, because he said, I'm going to lower the cost of living. That the crisis that Zambia was facing in 2021, he says the life was too expensive for our people. He actually said, look, I'll bring down the exchange rate. From 17 kwacha at the time, he said it will come to 12 kwacha. He said the price of millimil was 120 kwacha. He said he will bring it down to 50 kwacha. Fuel, fuel was 22 kwacha. He said it will come down to around, I think, 12, 14 kwacha. He gave these huge promises. Fertilizer. But for you who are technocrats, let's start with the president's vision. He said he would do debt restructure and put a moratorium on debt. He has done the opposite. He has done the debt restructure, though not complete. There's a $3 billion that is yet to be structured. And, the debt has been postponed to payments beginning 2032. Between now and 2032, I think we'll still be paying very high debt service obligations. Number two, he has gone on a borrowing spree. He found a foreign debt of $11.9 billion at 2021. It's now sitting in excess of $15.5 billion. He has even a fresh request to the IMF of $1.5 billion. So he has broken again that promise. He said there'll be a moratorium on debt. He has borrowed excessively again. In a period of 4 years, he's literally borrowed another $4 billion. Then there's the issue of domestic debt. The domestic debt is worrying because that's what drives the economy of any country. The local debt has ballooned from 178 billion kwacha in 2021 to now 236 billion kwacha, and rising if you see the supplementary budget that he requested and the deficit that his budget is facing. George, you are the economist and financial analyst. I mean, you both are in your own right. But let's start with George. Where are we going right? Why has he done what he shouldn't have done? Although you, Georgia, should point out that you've been very optimistic of President Hakainde Hichilema's policy. Maybe you can start with that, then explain.
Definitely. And I think to start with the pronouncements before elections, I saw the professor smile. Generally, with us economists, we are not politicians until maybe we think we are. But for the most part, there are just certain restrictions, and these restrictions are not because we feel people are incapable. These are mathematical restrictions, Ambassador. When you look at the reality of some of the pronouncements before elections, I was very vocal in saying that none of the things that are being promised are going to happen because it was a mathematical impossibility. When I look at the number, because remember, as an analyst, I'm not here to analyze and come up with conclusions people like. That's why I'm always in and out of politics, because there's no way I can commit to a discipline and then argue against that discipline. So a number of things that politicians say about the economy are just a lie. They are impossible to happen. When you say bringing down the cost of living, it's not really going to work like that. Once prices increase, they continue increasing. They never really go down on an aggregate. Yes, a piece of chicken may have been 100 kwacha, now it's 90 kwacha, but on an aggregate, the cost of living generally doesn't go down. It's a whole concept with inflation. Zambia averages about 7%. Prices will always increase. What we argue is wages meeting those cost of living. That's a strategy that is better and more realistic. This is why
George, let me just interrupt. You seem to say something very fundamental. So did you regard those campaign promises as a set of lies? From the onset, did you state that it's not possible to reduce the prices as President Hakainde was alleging? Did it concern you that as a leader, possible president of the country, he was making such sweeping pledges? And as Professor says, this is an economist.
Well, remember, and this is, I think, symptomatic of politicians, how they decide to campaign and seek the presidency. That is pretty much their own strategy. And I do believe that even under PF, we had these promises of lower taxes, and in the end, we ended up even increasing payee. So I try not to delve in too much whether I think they are politicians and they have to do what I expect politicians to do. However, in my position as an analyst, I am going to say that no, this is impossible. And case in point, where they were talking about, I think UPND was talking about electricity, load shedding, cost of living, all these things, right? And I used to post and say, no, these like you coming in and saying that you are going to stop load shedding in an economy where the population is increasing and the electrical infrastructure was designed for people who were like 6 million at that time. When you look at the numbers and the variables related to that equation and that conclusion, they just don't make sense. So it's impossible for me as an analyst to come and say that, oh, what President Hakainde Hichilema is saying is going to happen. So that's why I'm always saying that I'm in politics and I'm not in politics, because there are just certain things that don't make sense in my mind, and I can't really say the opposite. I have a fiduciary responsibility to my profession to do the things the way professor teaches us to do it. If you're an economist, there are certain things you have to say. There are equations that you have to work with. So to that point, Ambassador, I think politicians are politicians, but when we are discussing the economy, there are certain restrictions. I personally, I wouldn't make those promises. I think that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't make promises that I know are impossible. I think our infrastructure, our energy infrastructure, is going to continue being a problem. The cost of living is going to will continue to be a problem until we circle back to what Professor was talking about, where we become an export oriented country. We are increasing the wages of Zambians. If we're not going to really do too much on the price of products and services, but we can make Zambians richer to be able to afford the new prices that are coming into the economy. I think that's the difference in strategy.
Yeah, thank you. Professor. Yeah, Professor. Professor, when
yes.
you are on record, you were supporting President Hakainde Hichilema very, very strongly. But when you heard some of his campaign promises to our people, and our people, I don't want to use the term gullible, our people believe what politicians say. If a politician promised that they will do a road, our people believe a road will be done. If a politician promises that a bridge will be built here, our people believe that. And they take that word to the bank. They give you a vote. When you heard some of the promises by President Hakainde Hichilema that would reduce, for example, the exchange rate would appreciate immediately, became president by 14 hours, that the price of milimi would drop down to 50 kwacha, that he will put up a debt moratorium because he would not borrow at all. Did some of these promises concern you? Or how did you regard them? You might regard them as campaign rhetoric, but our people make decisions based on that campaign promise.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question, Ambassador Mwamba. First of all, let's put things correct where they should be. I have never been a UPND. And when we supported Hakainde Hichilema, we didn't support him because of what he was telling the people. In fact, it's even better for you to categorize me as a disenfranchised PF in the manner Dr. Chagwalungu took over the party. Me, I was an anti-Lungu, so I was just campaigning for anybody but Lungu. Go on TV, Bakwet. My endorsement was never directly to his program, his things and stuff like that. So that's why I feel I have the liberty to even comment on the failure of his policies and his practices. The key purpose of us to put in government is to make sure that we give our people an upward mobility in the economic sense. So people must be rising on the economic ladder. Are our people rising? I have very many doubts about that, because since he came into power and since he's maintained the power, the problems are the same. 60% of our people are still living below the poverty line. So whatever we are doing, however we want to smile about it or categorize it, it's just not working. And it's insane, because insanity is doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different outcome. So I never supported his policies or his politics. I just wanted Edgar Lungu out. So I said anybody but Lungu, because of the misgivings I had about Lungu. Because even in the Christian church, we are told that for now, there's no longer no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. It has two things. One, if you've repented and you've crossed over, we can't condemn you over your former sins. But there is also another part of it. If you have died, we cannot start singing over your mistakes. So that is why I can talk further about that subject, because Dr. Lungu is not alive and he's not here. And we can't keep on piling up, condemning him. In fact, he has been denied even the ability to be buried. So even when I see the songs, the kids are crying about him, I'm compassionate and sympathetic to that because of my Christian side. However, going about the policies and the things that they are doing to run the country now, there are serious deficits. That's why we need to change players in there. There are serious deficits. Let me give you just a practical example. How good are they using mathematics? Because we are still importing toothpicks. Still importing toothpicks. In the 21st century, we're still importing toothpicks in a country that has got trees. Why are we doing that? You know, the moratoriums that we need is not a moratorium on debt and all those kind of things. Those are our operational issues. Okay, we have to be fair to them, Ambassador Mwamba. The borrowing that they're doing is not the same borrowing as the PF were doing. The borrowing that they're doing are concessional loans that you pay off for over a long period of time. So what that means is that you cannot immediately feel the impact on your budget, except the infusion of the cash that comes in will help you to do transactions in the global economy. But where you are,
you men here,
counting,
you are economist and financial analyst. Let's just get maybe 3 specific examples. I was worried, for example, about the Kansanshi deal. It is this way. There is a dispute that was both in court in Zambia and in London. At stake was a $2.5 billion that First Quantum had borrowed and literally externalized without the authority of the minority shareholder, ZCCMIH. President Hakainde Hichilema has resolved that crisis at Kansanshi copper and gold mine in this way. He has dropped the criminal cases in Lusaka against the directors of First Quantum. He has discontinued the case to recover that $2.5 billion in London and in Lusaka. He has restructured the shareholding of Kansanshi copper and gold mine. ZCCM is no longer a shareholder in Kansanshi copper and gold mine. They've been given an annual royalty payment of 3.1%. My concerns in that deal, and I hope, George, that you are familiar and both professors are familiar with that, is that First Quantum seems to have gotten away literally with murder. First of all, the claim to pay back to Zambia $2.5 billion. I think has been lost to Zambia. We will not get that money. Secondly, the shareholding that ZCCM-IH has of 20% has been converted to a mineral royalty payment of 3.1% without paying for the actual shares. Because what I expected is that the shares are being converted. The value of the shares in Kansanshi is, for example, $4 billion. We are going to pay you $4 billion. Now that we've changed your structure, you have lost your shareholder value and your shareholder capacity. We will now be paying you this 3.1 beginning this year. But first, the shares should have been paid. First, let's discuss just this scenario before we move to Mopani. George.
Okay, let me jump in there and borrow on George's wisdom that we cannot deny the tenets of our profession. When they converted the shares to a royalty payment, what they wanted, you see, when you're a shareholder, the money you get is after the net income. You get the money from the dividends. So if the dividends are not declared, you get paid nothing. So what the wisdom of that move was that when they are paying them from the royalties, they are paying them before the net income. They are paying them from the revenue. And we cannot fault that as a mistake from a financial standpoint of view. Why? Because the government chose to be collecting money top of the line rather than the bottom of the line. Okay? Two, those cases that have been discontinued, they can be reopened. But you see, you can't have your largest taxpayer in the country in court. You know, that is creating a hostile environment for business operations. So we have to be able to allow them to operate so we can continue to take money from them, rather than putting a stalemate in the business relationship. So on that score, I am, unfortunately, I have to say unfortunately, because these days I'm not agreeing with them on anything. Unfortunately, I have to side with the government on that issue.
Professor, my concern is at the stage of the conversion, the value of the 20% shareholding, don't you think it should have been paid for? Because if you change the status of my shares, where now it just becomes contributory. I was the owner, I'm no longer an owner. Shouldn't have First Quantum paid for the value of those shares than just begin at the royalty payment?
That is a very constructive political position, but it does not make economic sense. I will explain why. There are debt instruments that we can convert to equity. We don't go backwards to say, oh, the bonds prior to that were at this value. And then we do at conversion date moving forward. That's how we negotiate those instruments. Those are the accounting rules. IFRS, or if we're using IFRS, or we're using generally accepted accounting principles of the United States. That's how we do them. We do them prospectively. We don't do them retroactively. The accounting rules don't allow us to do that.
Thank you, George. The deal of Kansanshi.
Yes, Ambassador, and I was laughing because Professor was kind of tied to accept that the Zambian government did what they can on that deal. But I agree with the Professor 100% from a P&L standpoint of view, but I'm also equally concerned with the same way Ambassador is concerned. Because I love my balance sheet. And the reason why I love equity is because even if the guys at Kansanshi are not giving me any money, as long as I can see that equity on my balance sheet, I can go around the world and borrow money. And again, I'm speaking from a CFO standpoint of view. If I was...
George, we have a wide audience. When you say you love the equity on the balance sheet, please explain to the people what that means. I think maybe use terms like if I own the company. Because when you say I love the equity on my balance sheet, I understand, but our people may not understand.
So think about it like this, right? I think the Kansanshi deal is you and your brother have a company, and your brother hasn't been paying you anything, but the value of your share, the value of your ownership in that company is 1 billion. And you tell your brother to say, hey, I know I have ownership in this company, but you guys never pay me any dividends. You know what? Why not just give me 3% of the revenue? Whatever revenue you guys are bringing in, give me 3%. However, I'll also give up the 1 billion ownership. Remember, this was the value. In my world, I would say, keep your dividends. I don't care about your dividends. Keep your royalty. I know because every year, my ownership value in that company is increasing. So if it's an argument of cash flow, Ambassador, I would simply leverage my ownership in that company as collateral and go and borrow money. Because the lenders will say, oh, you have a $4 billion ownership in Kansanshi, we can give you 1 billion. When you look at the dividends that we are getting, 3% of whatever revenues that they have, wouldn't it make sense for me to retain ownership? Whether they are paying dividends or not, that's not my concern. My concern is that I can see my ownership value in this mine continuously growing. And as long as it's growing, I can leverage that ownership. Because remember, that ownership, when you went to ZCCM balance sheets, right, you will find that ownership there. That's why now ZCCM has a ballooned value of almost $50 billion in assets. I'm interested in that. I'm not interested in the cash flow from Kansanshi. I can always leverage other assets ZCCM has to gain that cash flow. So while if I was exposed to more information on the deal, I would have a different position. But given the information that I've seen, or whatever information that is public, Ambassador, I'm inclined to agree with you. I don't think it made sense, in my view, mathematically speaking, to give up equity for a royalty fee. And maybe it makes sense if I'm cash strapped, right? There are cases where, you have $10 million worth of real estate property, but they're not as liquid as you want them. And at that time, you really need $2 million cash infusion. So maybe you may end up giving up a part of that real estate portfolio that you wouldn't have given up had you had the cash flow. So if I'm exposed to more information, I may change my position and think it was a good deal. But I'm asking myself, was it worth the deal to give up the equity? If they say, well, George, we needed cash, I would have said, well, if you need cash, just leverage your equity in the mine and go borrow some money while your equity continues to grow every year. You see, that's how I would think about it as a CFO or as an analyst. So given the information that I've been given, or the information that has been made public, I wouldn't have made that deal personally.
Yeah. Thank you, George. And also, of course, for me, the two aspects of concerns are, number one, the value of the shares. When you just convert them, I lose ownership. ZCM is no longer a shareholder of Kansanshi Copper and Gold Mine. For me, someone should have paid us for those values before converting it to an annual royalty payment in the future. Now there are even discussions, First Quantum is trying to sell some of the assets of they have in their mines in Northwestern Province because of the crisis that they've had in Panama, where they actually invested partly that $2.5 billion we are talking about into Panama. My other pain has always been, you have the Minister of Finance begging for $1.3 billion for 3-4 years, but you failed to pursue a legitimate claim of money stolen from your company of $2.5 billion. Those are my serious concerns. And now takes me to what we can do, Professor and George, is that we are available every day. We can give our self tasks that I give George time to look at a deal at Mopani, KCM, and Kansanshi. As we discuss the mining sector, when we bring a mining expert who can give us technical aspects of the mining sector, we can come back, researched, independent views, then we come and discuss this particular matter in detail. But it takes me to the other concern, Mopani. Mopani enjoyed an investment of $4.5 billion in between 2015 and 2020. The Glencore, the previous owners, invested in 3 brand new mining shafts. One in Kitwe, the other ones in Mufulira. 3 brand new shafts. They invested in 2 new smelters. Total $4.5 billion. There was an issue. They were being pursued. The directors of Glencore, who owned Mopani, were being pursued by FBI, by the Serious Frauds Office in London, and by other law enforcement agencies. You must have followed that matter up. They quickly began to offload their assets. I think they feared that something terrible might happen to them because there was a verdict coming up both in London and in New York. What they did is Glencore sold some of their aspects in Namibia, I think a zinc mine in South Africa. In Australia, they had earlier offloaded their investment. For Zambia, they put Mopani on care and maintenance and risked the job of about, I think, 12,000 workers. So government then forced them to a discussion. So they were willing to give that mine up. And they said, but we've just invested $4.5 billion. How much can you pay? So I think there was to and fro negotiations. And government says they had no money. It was COVID time. Government was cash strapped. It was suffering from this debt burden and debt repayment schedule. They said they had no money. So Mopani went into a very classic, beautiful deal. He says, we'll give you the mine at $1, but you owe us $1.5 billion, and you surrender your marketing rights so that for every copper you sell from Mopani, we'll be deducting until we recover that $1.5 billion. You both must be aware about this deal. Then President Hakainde Hichilema wins election. He has Mopani, literally a brand new company, 3 brand new shafts, 2 new smelters. It requires just capital. ZCCMIH has done a plan that they need $300 million to start full operation of these mines. And they had forecast that up to 200,000 metric tons of copper can be achieved in production within a period of 2 years. But President Hakainde Hichilema stopped the sale. He said we are going to stopped ZCCM from either borrowing that $300 million or running the mine. He said they were going to get an equity partner. So an equity partner was obtained in a company called International Resource Holding, a subsidiary of the Abu Dhabi-based International Holding Company. The deal has raised concerns. First, no money has been paid to the state. There were pledges and only commitment that they'll clear the debt. I think the debt with Glencore then from $1.5 billion was standing somewhere around $700-800 million because Mopani had been paying since 2020. My concern with this sale is, first of all, I think that ZCCMI should have been given an opportunity to run the mine. And for the first time in Zambia since 2000, we were now holding a large-scale mine 100%. But I think that opportunity was denied. 2, no money was paid. A deal is $1.1 billion. I think 450 went to Glencore to pay off that debt. And that debt has now been registered under PACRA as a shareholder loan to Mopani. You guys are financial analysts and experts. I don't know what you understand about this deal, what your concerns are. Let's discuss this particular matter. George.
Again, the problem with talking about these deals is that I always feel I don't have all the information that they may have had to think that the path that they are taking is logical. But again, I wouldn't make that deal, like from what we've seen in public, right? Because if you come to me, ambassador, you give me an asset and you say, hey, George, initially I would have sold this to you for $2 billion. However, I will let you own the business for $1. Consider the $2 billion as a loan. Ambassador, that's a loan I wouldn't have gotten from the bank. And then on top of that, the only thing I'm left with is a $300 million operating budget. I just need to raise $300 million. So think about it, ambassador. I'm sitting on an asset that I can go into the market right now, and the valuation of that asset would be $4 billion. You tell me that I owe you $2 billion. Already I have a difference between assets and liabilities of $2 billion. That is enough leverage for me to go to any bank in this world, any hedge fund, and say, hey, I have $2 billion worth of value in these operations. Can you give me $500 million? Let's do a deal, a loan deal, where I can pay you as time goes by. This is how I would make sense of that deal. Why and how the government did what they did, ambassador, again, like I always say, it's like I don't get it. I wish I had more information to understand their logic, but if it came to me as the one doing this Mopani deal, I would have been happy that these guys are selling it to me for $1. I would have been happy to bring that debt on my balance sheet and hold it for the next 10, 20 years. I don't care. I'm not interested in paying them fast. I'm interested in getting value out of that mine as fast as possible. And in that entire framework, you give me an asset that already has a value of about $2 billion. And you just said, George, your job is to go and raise $500 million. Any CFO that you hire would not have a problem doing that job. In fact, I would have the money for you guys to start operating that mine in less than a month. Because again, remember, I have $2 billion and you're asking me to, I'm giving these guys collateral with $2 billion and I'm only getting 500 million. You see? So it's very difficult for me, and I really, really wish I had more information where I understood that logic. But just given the variables that are presented to me, I wouldn't have made those deals. The Kansanshi mine, I feel the same way. The Mopani deal, I feel the same way. So unless government or anybody involved in those deals knows something that the rest of us as a public don't know, as is, I don't think those deals were worth making.
Yeah, thank you. Let me invite Professor. What will do, George? You are connected. You speak for not necessarily like you are a spokesperson for President Hakainde Hichilema, but you think it means well. Gather from your network and your sources the information about just the mining sector and the decisions that have been made. We can have a second round of talks. But let me invite Professor, his view about Mopani. I don't know if he has taken time to study it. And then we go generally to the management of the economy so far. Then we open the phone lines. Professor.
The problem we're having with the Hakainde Hichilema government is corruption. Everything, you see, when I was young, I met a guy from Texas and who said, if something looks suspicious, it is suspicious. Yeah. So what we have, the problem with the UPND government currently, is they have not done enough to avoid appearances of corruption. That we must nail it. We must nail it to them. They have not done enough to avoid appearances of corruption. Why do I say this? They make these deals, which even at first value look stupid. But like George said, we don't have enough information. So what we have to do is to solicit for more information from these, our people in charge of our country. It seems that they are cutting deals where they are getting cuts and things like that. And we are reaching a point where everything that they're doing looks suspicious. You know, they cut a deal with Mopani, they cut a deal with another group that comes to take over Mopani. Everything just looks suspicious.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
if
Professor.
they don't provide,
Yeah, let me seek your views as we open phone lines. Where should our country be headed to? Why should our country be stuck in a cycle of debt? President Hakainde Hichilema accused the PF government of borrowing, of engaging in massive borrowing. He has done the same. Where are we getting it wrong? How can we run our economy better? How can it achieve these future prospects we dream of?
Let me respond to that. Let me respond to that question.
Thank you, Professor.
Whichever government we're going to put in, we are going to do some borrowing because that's how business operates. So some borrowing is relevant to bridge the cash gaps within the system. Yeah. So, but what we have to look at is the cost of those borrowings. And this is the area in which we are not giving the current guys enough credit because the cost of their debt is very low. And the repayment periods are longer. So we can do corrective action.
Professor, I think there's nothing wrong with borrowing. Before I bring in George, the issue of concern has been that mechanisms to raise, for example, domestic income are neglected. You are just aware that Msokotwane has exempted the mining sector, that they should export concentrates, and the value of the loss to the treasury will be in excess of $500 million this year. It's not that the money is not available. Do we have to resort to borrowing? I agree when you say some borrowing have to take place. The concerns from our people is that we have neglected mechanisms to raise money. Look at the people that pay taxes. There are very few, I think about 300,000 people pay taxes in a country with a population of 20 million people. Although members of the community, members of our country do pay some form of taxes like VAT or, these taxes on goods and services. But essentially the key payers, like for payers UN, are very, very few in our country, and they are shouldering this big burden. Then you have payers, taxpayers like the mines that seem to get away with murder. I think that's where the consensus is, that it has been easier for politicians, therefore, just to get the begging bow from outside, IMF borrowers or China borrowers, than to raise money from the, locally. So before I bring in George, I thought I could give that perspective. But you continue your thought.
Thank you, sir. I totally agree with you that we shouldn't forget about ability to raise money locally. And perhaps that's the area in which our current government is not doing enough. And we must use this platform to tell them, hey, we can raise that money locally. We have new gold mines discovered. Put in ZCCM IH, let's call it ZCCM. Let's put in ZCCM in there. And then, sell the gold or keep the gold and help the country. It's as simple as that. The problem we are facing with this current government is corruption. They try to make things look very technical, even when there is no technicality. They are trying to dribbling, but then after Kamungalato, Maingisha on go. So we have to find a way out of this situation. The guys that we have in charge of the country right now, they don't have the skills to run the country. That is the truth.
George, the same question to you.
So I think obviously I'm going to have a different opinion on where things are in terms of is it a springboard for future development. One of the things that we have to agree, and I think everybody here would understand, is that the time that the president was coming into power, we had just defaulted on debt, the Eurobond structure. And for me, that's a very big problem. And just in my profession as a CFO, the last thing I ever want to do is default on a loan that I have to pay. The president came into power with that reality hanging behind him, right? And everything, and I said this, I did not expect the president to have the level of success that he's had in trying to make this debt infrastructure normal. And I think we have to give that credit to the sense that, one, even though yes, borrowing has been happening, we have to look at it's not and again, Ambassador, I've often seen this everywhere in the news, right? People hear and say $10 billion was borrowed. But what exactly is that $10 billion doing? It may not necessarily add a layer to the existing balance. It may just come in and refinance the existing balance. So the existing balance may be $13 billion. If you, Ambassador, if you hear I say that I borrowed $15 billion, it doesn't mean that my balance now suddenly becomes 45 billion. It can be that the $15 billion is coming in, restructuring the current balance to make sure that I have better terms or better cash flow, and my new balance may easily be 35 billion. So I think the population, I don't think they understand exactly how these balances accrue or increase. Because if you look at the Ministry of Finance website, the amount of borrowing that that people say UPND has done, when you look at our balance right there and then, external versus domestic, Ambassador, it hasn't gone up by barely $1 billion. And I know I'm citing numbers, and obviously I would have to provide some type of clarification later on. I can send you an email on that matter. But I think beyond the politics, I understand the politics of saying, well, you said you're not going to borrow money, but you're borrowing money. I understand that. But purely as a numbers situation, we have to look at the balance. Don't worry about the amount that people are saying they are borrowing. No, I need to see the balance. Case in point, right now, I have a $2.8 million loan. I'm borrowing 5.4, but Ambassador, $2.8 million of that $5.4 million is a refinance of my existing balance. So my balance is not going to be like 8 mil. No, it will still be 5.4 million. And I think we really need to look at debt from that vantage point. And if we do indulge in that, and everybody agrees that this is how the numbers are operating, Ambassador, I have to give the president an A+ on how he's managed debt, purely based on those numbers. Again, I'm not taking away the politics of debt and who said what, but I limit myself to what I'm seeing from a numbers perspective. Ambassador, if I look at the variance, whether it's external debt versus domestic debt, Ambassador, we've barely gone up $1 billion from a balance perspective.
I must agree with George on that. They are managing. Look at the way they are managing the reserves. Of course, I hate it because they have to manage the reserves in terms of import cover. Mm-hmm. We have to manage the reserves in the sense of keeping more money in the country. Yeah. So yes, on the side of managing the money or on the managing the debt, he has pushed his government into a position where debt is manageable. Debt is manageable. That we cannot take away from him as finance professionals. He has made debt manageable, where our country is not running in shame. Our country doesn't have the capacity to borrow. Our country doesn't have the capacity to function in the global economy. That is not the problem we have. The problem we have is those benefits. He does not have a connection between those benefits and the person at home in Zambia. Our people are not able to appropriate the benefits from his hyphenated numbers. He comes and tells you, oh, well, GDP is growing at 4% and stuff like that. When you go to the growth from the GDP, it just means that a hill was torn apart and minerals were taken out of the country, sold out of the country, and we never got cash out of it. But he comes and tells you, the people, the GDP has grown. And there's no translation of that growth to benefit the local person at home. That's where I have the problem, that they don't have the correct skills to run the country. Thank you, Vamu.
Wonderful. Dear viewers, it's your time to contribute. The phone lines are open. We are discussing the state of the economy. It could have been highly technical because I was utilizing the opportunity that I'm co-hosting these technocrats who are very competent in this field, but we'll try, as they've tried as much as possible, to break down into simple language. Our economy is failing. We are still borrowing. Cost of living crisis is still with us. Load shedding has affected our people the price of electricity is just so much. And our people are not seeing any benefits. But there are these intricacies that needed to be resolved. I have the first caller here on the line for Professor and George N. Mutonga. Caller, good evening. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Thank you, Ambassador. As usual, it's Patrick Chilufya from the UK.
Yes, Patrick.
Yeah, Mtonga, good to see you. Wakason, so good to see you. Yeah, I like your discussion, and to me, yes, debt is not bad, but again, when you're borrowing, like you remember George Mutonga, you're a financial person. You have to, if it's a company, you have to make sure that the ratio of that debt is not so much in comparison to your assets, fixed assets and cash. The moment your organization becomes highly geared, then there's a problem. But then, when you're borrowing, obviously, as an organization, you know that you're going to pay back. But Zambia has been going through that cycle of, 7 billion in Kaunda. Chiluba and Chiluba government came and restructured it. Mwanawasa helped us to reach the hip peak. And then we started borrowing again. And to me, I always talk about this. Not until we harness our mineral resources. We've got abundance of minerals, but we don't have a comprehensive policy. The best example is Botswana next door. You guys actually, I like what Mtonga said. Not until the government starts looking at raising revenue locally from our minerals, we're just going to be going through that cycle. When you look at the debt now, it might not look so bad with UPND, but this is a generational debt. We're not going to pay it in this generation. So why are we going to make the future generation suffer because of our carelessness? It doesn't, we've got what it takes to raise our own money. Botswana Botswana sells 50% of the diamonds. You know, they share like ZCCM-HI. They've got a vehicle there. They give it 50% goes to Botswana, 50% goes to De Beers, and then De Beers takes it to London to their holding company, Anglo America. The moment Botswana sells that 50%, the dollars come into Botswana.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Botswana is now, and whenever they are having a deal with De Beers, everything is on the newspaper. You can Google now the last deal between De Beers and Botswana, where they said De Beers will start putting 75 million every year for the diversification program for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me if you find Mopani deal, in the newspaper. Why are they hiding? Because there is lack of transparency and accountability with our politicians. Our politicians, there is lack of leadership. There is lack of patriotism. Why are they hiding something that is straightforward?
Thank you, Bachilu.
Let me finish. I want to talk about quickly QFM and Mopani. Quickly, Mwamba. Just give me a minute. So, Mwamba, Mopani, as you said it, Glencore spent about 4 billion, almost 4 billion, sinking a new shaft, smelter, everything. One of the reasons I resigned from UPND is because of Mopani, and I wrote to the president. If he's listening, I wrote to the president. I wrote to Bradford Machila, and they agreed to meet me so that we can discuss this issue. When I arrived in Lusaka, they dodged me, and that's one of the reasons I resigned from UPND. That transaction is suspicious. With that, because they haven't given us the figures. Because if I went openly with the seditious laws, they will jail me because I don't have that information. But when you look at that deal, I told the president, we only need 300 million. I did my research. Bamwamba, ZCCM-HI is listed on London and Paris Stock Exchange. Kaunda, when he got 51% from NCCM and RCM, he went to London. I think he used Zimco or Indeco. He issued a bond, 8-year bond, and he paid these two organizations. And that's how we acquired. So if you've got an asset like that, as George said, no bank in the world will refuse to give you the money. So, Mwamba, we sold 49%. Financial Times issued to start with. Where did IRH came from? Because they were not shortlisted by that company which was doing the shortlisting. It didn't go to Parliament. So all that is. But Financial Times said a non-company was given a deal from nowhere for 1.1 billion. So Bamwamba, Bakasonso and Mutonga, you're an accountant. I'm an accountant. When you are exchanging shares or you are selling something, there's what we call variable consideration. So in the Mopani case, we were selling the shares. And then what is the variable consideration for selling that share is 1.1 billion. Where is that 1.1 billion? Because the they paid to clear the debt is showing at Pakra as in Congole. Where is the difference of 600 and something? We should have been paid that money upfront. And then if they want to invest, they invest. All that we cannot see it. HH is not transparent. HH is not a leader. You know the biggest corruption organization in the whole world is called Transparency International, where there is lack of accountability and transparency. Financial Times said it. What Zambians need is accountability and transparency in deals like this. And then let me move on to SQM. Again, I support George. Again, we don't have enough information. It doesn't make common sense. How do you go and give out equity for royalty? How First, how did they cut? Because again, here, equity is given for royalty. So royalty is variable consideration. How did they quantify that royalty? In a normal business sense, if Zambia needed money, they could have sold equity first. We get the 1.1 billion. Royalty, we always get tax, either tax or royalty. So that deal also is suspicious. I rest my... and then the other point I wanted to make is, where do we sell our copper? Kaunda, when we got 51% in 1969, he went and opened a company called Memako. You guys can remember, metal marketing company, based in London. Why? Because we are selling copper in London. And then he opens the NACO branch in London. Why? Because when we sell the copper, 51%, because we own 51%, was going into a Zanaco bank account. And then Zanaco transfers the money into the Zambian Bank of Zambia. That's why we built Tazara. That's why we built Indeni. That's why we built Tazama pipeline, because of that money. But now, somebody goes into parliament and tells us copper is sold in Dubai. Who started selling copper in Dubai? And then where are the sales going? Are they coming to Bank of Zambia? I rest my case.
Thank you, Wachilufya. Wachilufya is a shareholder here, so we'll give him more time.
Mwayumfa energy yo.
Yes.
Guys aba.
Thank you, Mr. Mtonga and Wakasonso. Very good insights by our brother Wachilufya. I would just like to contribute when it comes to Zambia. Thank you, Mwamba, for starting to give an opportunity to technocrats, because I equally believe that if Zambia needs to change, if we need to continue moving, we must start talking to people with solutions. You will agree with me, you are a politician, that majority politicians, they only think about winning an election, whereas technocrats, they find solutions. Technocrats are planning for countries. And in this case, we have so many problems. I mean, look at what Wachilufya has just presented now. He goes down to the Kaunda days and brings us back to where we are today. So we can see that, and it's true, we can live to see that what Wakaunda did still stands until today. And then for some time, we haven't put up something really, really solid like what Wakaunda did in those days. Now, I have a problem that in Zambia, compared to the country where I live and other developed countries, they leave something for future generations, something positive. They save for future generations. In the case of where we are today in Zambia, today Shira Abisepela, Imitikula, Inkongole, we are failing to find solutions for them. Yes, in Congole. And Mwamba, I'm happy that you are saying you're going to bring more professionals who can. I think it will be very important that we get proper professionals in a field that they can break it down in a language that every layman like me can understand. Ngatwa Kongola, even when you have a mortgage, at some point you can go to the bank, therefore I extend. Once to extend the and then in the pano party, sometimes Balako to Karadi interest, but she didn't go to the Shilling with a punch. No, but she didn't go to show the Ishenda Mawala Shadana show excess because Waladi Panono, back foolish Nama years. She didn't motion to saving a Shidia. Shaya Kuisa, or showing the Fokumon, at least in Gabana Chitako present to say, either debt restructuring. Tuari saving so much, and this money is being channeled to ABCD because there's been quite a lot pressing issues that we could have been doing by now. We should be able to say, okay, the government is saving so much. Now, there are so many things that we can get in. I try to confuse myself, but then I still find my way out. Where does the problem start? Like now, we are getting into an election. Are we going to pile in more and more problems for Zambia economically? Yes. We are already planning an election. I will tell you, Mwamba, Noah is going to an election next month. It's quiet. This is a country that is very, very wealthy. Look at us. An election is next year. But not one Bakadama party regarding. In the machine for Makuisa. Again, Badiaba to pay in the Namavadia. Bakesa Shifua in the Lamashao. Baka to Congress 20 million, but how much are they going to come and get from us? 200 million, maybe plus, billions of dollars. Why are we doing that to ourselves? When will we take our country seriously? Another thing, Mwamba, I just want to just conclude. It is important that Zambians start now looking for solutions for problems that are existing, new solutions for problems that are existing. We cannot keep on talking about the same thing. Nganin Kongole, let us see it, be able to understand, to say, Nifo today, how do they manage? And then the people we're also putting in office, those are people that are letting us down. Like as also George talked about, somebody wants to do the right thing, but then you've got the authorities. We need to have independent institutions that are functioning for Zambia to stand. Indalama shide isaba mwamba, na tukwatama mines awade shitisha, but they are God mine good. Shide fumakuisa shide indalama abantu bade balipira cash. We are money laundering. Zambia has been seen as money laundering. Tufuire twice, salama kona monse mudia. Abanes my airports. Balachita control how much money you come into the country. We have witnessed at the airport people, foreigners coming with suitcases of bags. All those places are places we are losing out revenue. That money should be declared. That money should be going through the banks. So we can sit here and talk, but the most important thing for Zambia to continue growing, we must start generating income. That is what we need. Where we get the money, it's within the country. Everybody's flocking to Zambia. Why? Yes, we've got a gold deal that we can go and present to the bank, but we must be journalists. We must be serious. We must take ourselves serious that we mean business. We must stop being weak by showing that we are corrupt people. That is why we are the target. Sorry, Mwamba, for being a little bit emotional. But
No,
I
love it. Our people need to be emotional about our country.
To save this country, we must stop this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think she's right. She says, don't leave our future generation, Professor Kasonso, debt. Don't reschedule debt. Leave them sovereign fund where you are accumulating your sovereign funds. Caller, good evening. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Good evening. This is Patricia. I'm calling you from Germany.
Yes, Patricia.
Mr. Mtonga, good evening, Professor.
Good evening.
Can you get me clearly, Ambassador?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay, so my question goes to both of your panelists. And my question would be, when you look at the leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema, do you think he's managing Zambia as a leader that we need, that cares for its people? Or he's managing it as a business? Because this has been our concern. When we look at him, it's like he transactions without minding that he has to care for about 22 million people and ensure that these people have power, have food, and have everything that they need. He makes deals as though he's transacting. Can you analyze him? Looking at his policies and everything that he's doing, the laws he's bringing, everything that he proposes. He went and signed a deal of the Lobito corridors, whatever it is, in Angola, ensuring that our minerals be extracted easily and through that route. When you look at it, what has he planned for the province where the minerals are? He has promised various things to Northwesterners. He has brought nothing to them. He has brought a -100. And my worry is soon he will start constructing a rail line. Only God knows what he has agreed there. Why can't he make deals with these people to be partners with them so that they build these processing plants in Northwestern, and they do everything that we can so that we can have also our minerals, some of them, or maybe up to a certain percentage, remain in our country, instead of signing deals where everything goes under our watch. So I would just like you to expand on that and analyze him as a person, because we want to be careful. for next year, so that we don't choose a businessman. We don't need a billionaire or a businessman. At least we need somebody that cares for the people and somebody that understands our problem. When you look at President Hakainde Hichilema, he looks as though he's very disconnected from the people, and that's why he doesn't care whether we complain, we ask for forgiveness, we ask for an apology, we ask him to reconsider that he cares for us. He doesn't care. He will just move on as business as usual. So we don't need that because we are stressed under his leadership. And I would like you to comment on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. They are saying he's a transactional leader. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening.
Today I'm not hiding my name.
Oh,
I'm James.
James, wonderful,
Ambassador,
wonderful.
Yes, Ambassador, Mr. George and Professor. The state of affairs for our economy is quite embarrassing. And the reason why we are where we are, it's because of politics. First of all, I would like to define what politics is.
No,
politics to a politician is an act of getting campaign money from the rich and votes from the poor by promising to protect each from the other. But more often than not, it is the people that suffers. In our case, Zambia, the reason why we are suffering is simple. The president and his government, they are failing to balance between politics and economics. It's as simple as that. Because why do we elect presidents is for them to make things easy for us. But what we have seen with our beloved government of the UPND, they are making very unpopular decisions to disadvantage the very people that voted for them, which is very bad. So when I take you back, Mwamba, you served under our president FTJ. Remember, Zambia had very serious problems when Dr. Chiluba took over from KK. One of them was smuggling, and the other one was transport problems. When Dr. Chiluba came, he asked the same technocrats he found, what is the problem here? They told him the problem, and all those problems of transport and the smuggling things were sorted out by common sense.
Thank you, James.
I feel UPND government, they are just making things deliberately. Otherwise, all our problems can be sorted out by common sense.
Thank you, thank you.
These economics things that we are talking about cannot work here. They can work in developed countries. Here, someone has to make decisions. Do we need to go and read books of economics to reduce the price of minimum? No, it's just a decision. You make a decision and the things are reduced. So the problem we have right now is that government is not making decisions for the betterment of the people. Whatever they are doing is only favoring foreigners. Maybe, who knows, they are partners in business or something. So I think that's the problem that we have. I rest my case.
Thank you very much. Let me take the last caller, then we invite the panel to answer to your concerns, then we go back to the questions. Caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Good evening. Since today's program is not so political, I will say what my name is. My name is Brian Matambo. Jones Kasonso is my friend and cousin.
Yes,
Good evening,
Brian.
Professor.
Yes.
Yes. So I have two questions, and I grew up in a mining town. So the first question is going to be around the issue of mining. On the issue of mine ownership, we saw Baincut Mining operating the nickel mine in Mazapoka. What they actually did was that the owners of the project were a Chinese company that was listed in Canada. Most of the workers were Zambian, but the mining contractor was Australian. They had expertise from Australia. Okay, but they had Zambian workers. So my question is, if the problem in Zambia is that we can't, we can't run a mine, why can't we use that model where we own the mines and we hire expert companies to do the actual mining? The excuses around ownership of the mines, they really don't add up in as far as I'm concerned. We saw that happen with a nickel mine in Mazabuka. The second question that I have has to do with how we should have benefited from foreign exchange. Now, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an economist, but the two gentlemen maybe can help us understand. If government insists on giving these tax holidays, why don't they insist also on ensuring that these big conglomerates that own these big mines bank their money here in Zambia, so that at least we benefit from a little bit of foreign exchange? They sell the copper and the gold, they bank here. Even if they don't pay any tax, somehow that, I believe, I stand corrected, but wouldn't that help us benefit, even if it is just to benefit from foreign exchange? Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, gentlemen. I hope you give me satisfactory responses.
Thank you. Gentlemen, drink some water and come and answer those questions.
Folks can't ride your back unless your back is bent. The poet says, "Is this your back that is bent?" Martin Luther says, folks can't ride your back unless your back is bent. So we've got to straighten up our backs, because when folks straighten up their backs, you know they're going somewhere. And so we were here today to begin to strengthen up the first few faltering steps in the direction of building a buoyant, a resilient, a united, a proud Africa. And so we met in Lusaka today to reaffirm, to deepen, to broaden a relationship between Botswana and Zambia. A relationship that must translate into concrete deliverables, that must transform the lives and livelihoods of the multitudes in our countries. A relationship that must serve as an exemplar for the rest of the continent. Call on the rest of Africa to straighten up our backs. And this relationship must endure. It must carry and sustain not just Botswana and Zambia. It must ripple far and wide and cover the rest of the African continent.
Prof, let me start with you. George is just making himself a cup of tea. So answer to the questions from Bachilufia from the United Kingdom to Our Lady who raised the concerns. Then by then George will have been back with his coffee. Then he can also contribute. So we'll start with you, Professor.
Thank you, sir. I will pick a generalist view rather than addressing the specifics. You know, what we're lacking in our country is good governance. Good governance is about transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. When you look at the way the finances are being managed, yes, there are monies that are being kept in the reserves. So the reserves are almost, they are like $500 million less the Mona was standard. But I always complain about these numbers because they don't know how to transfer those resources to the common man on the streets of Zambia. When we talk about the resources we're exporting out of our country, we've spoken about this for over an hour, and George did a good job on that. When you export to other countries, you want your people to keep more of what they are earning from the global economy. So in that sense, we're not having help from our current administration. Yeah. We have to be able to, you know, one of the things I'm concerned about is that we are going to end up to be just a big talk show. We should be actors in the existence of our own country. We should be participants in what is happening in our economy. We can't have GDP growing every year, but the people who are living below the poverty line are still at 60%. So don't talk to me about a growing economy and how people are doing, the economy is doing fine, if we are not pushing people through to have upward mobility in their own country. There are no resources that the Zambians are going to have from everywhere else, other than the resources they have in their own country. So we have to increase their own equity. Yes, we can make temporal transactional situations, although George Yuba Mwamba Verified, you condemn that model. I am actually for that model because we need to be able to have cash flow on which we can run the country. And sometimes the cash flow doesn't need to come in debt form. It's not always that we have to be able to borrow because we have equity somewhere. No. We need to be able to have the cash flowing into the country, in and out of the country. I'm just looking at the numbers here. In 2024, we exported goods worth $11 billion. And we imported goods worth $10.9 billion. But of the goods we imported in those billions, only a few $100 million came to us. The rest of the money remained in the global economy. So it's economy stupid. We don't operate, we are not running the economy in a fashion that we need to be running it. That's why our people are suffering. That's why the cost of living is going up. The cost of living, yes, will never come down, but there are mitigations we can do to the cost of living. I actually have done a video on the mitigations to the high cost of living. We need to have rising incomes within the economy, and we need to have people employed. We need to raise the employment rate higher in the economy. Those are the statistics that are important. If we are not doing that, Katushmandi mukafa tukasende bamalayika ku mundu bekesa mukutusarani kyalo kwata mwa abantu mu Zambia. Kwacho baba kiranda poti kwacho baba kiranda point yakwe bati what did she say? Patricia from Germany. She said something very important. That's why I have a large head. So we know what we need to be able to have are people running a country like a business. Running a country like a business.
Yeah, she talked about
running a country like a business.
Running a country like a business, but she also talked about, she bemoaned that we are leaving the future generation, because remember we have restructured the
debt. Yes.
She says our friends leave a sovereign fund for the future, as we are leaving a debt and then running the country like a business. Yeah.
Okay. I'll side with her on one issue and I'll be against her on another issue. The one thing I am going to be against her on is that running a country like a business is okay. Because if we are running a country like a business, it means we want to take more of what we are earning and keep it in the business. That is how a business survives. If you don't do that, the business dies. So we need to run the country like a business in the sense of keeping more of what we are earning from the global economy. But we're not doing that. So we're not even running the country like a business. Because if we're running a country like a business, we have to be able to have more resources for us to spend on other things that we need. And now the point on which I'm going to be against
just a minute, sir. Let me just take quick pause, and I'm glad that George is now back from his coffee break. Let me take maybe 4 questions, then you answer them in that summary form. Caller, please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Ambassador Mwamba, it's Chilofia from the UK.
Yes, Chilofia.
Yes, and I'm glad that the last caller was speaking about what that lady spoke about. I agree with that lady and everything that she said. Listen, Ambassador, we are in a situation where our people have been made to believe that we are actually developing when we are not. I think privately, I've said this to you. Can I say it publicly?
Yes, please.
My firstborn is a solicitor. My secondborn is a doctor. They were at uni when we had Jeremy Corbyn in opposition. He comes in telling people that he's going to introduce free education up to university. You can't. You're getting yourself into trouble. Here we are with a country that I was born, a country where I am coming from, people being taught there is free education. Come on, it has to be paid. It's got to be paid for somehow. Somebody has got to. You're going to be taxing people, or you're going to be borrowing. That, like that lady was saying. What are we going to leave for the children that we are having now? Absolutely nothing. That's the direction we are headed. I will tell you something. I am fearful. Only today, I was speaking to my nephew, and the boy starts telling me, I've seen Emmanuel Mwamba saying he's going to stand for presidency. We don't need that, Ambassador, and I'm sure you know. And this is where the problem is. This is where we are going to hand it to Hakainde. And it's reason why they are singing there's no opposition. Because yes, we are divided. We are dealing with a man who knows. Do you know, he learned all those years that he was in opposition. He learned. And he knows. Go and divide them and rule them. That's where we are, Ambassador.
Thank you very much,
are we getting
Bachilufia.
anything from our resources? No.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Thank you very much for that contribution, my dear brother. Sorry, he didn't listen. Sorry, Bachilufia. Let's just get a few calls quickly. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Good evening, Ambassador Mwansa. Sorry, Mwamba.
Good evening. Good evening.
I'll remain anonymous.
Anonymous, make your contribution.
Thank you. I've got two questions pertaining to tax. I don't know, either of the gentlemen can answer me. Do you think the current tax policies we have are friendly to small businesses, and what reforms would you propose to make Zambia's tax system maybe more efficient or equitable? Those are my two questions.
Thank you very much. Quick and the last caller before we hand it over to George and Professor. Hello, good evening. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Hi, good evening, Mwamba. It's Robin calling from the UK. I think I've been on the show twice now. Really just want to thank you for everything that you're doing. I think really I'd like to also fully agree with everything Patricia from Germany said, that actually we can't just focus on deals and loans and going into further and further debt. We need to start talking about how we grow ourselves as an economy. The one critical thing that we haven't spoken about today is energy, and how energy plays a role. It's a national crisis at the moment, the lack of energy. So even that investment that you expect in terms of new business coming into the country, they will not be able to come in and set up factories if they don't know when their machinery will operate. So that's my point today. We need to focus on energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. George, I hope you have re-energized. I leave all these questions to you. Quickly answer.
Obviously, as somebody who came to the show with supporting the president, obviously, you guys have really put me in a hot seat. I like it, but it's very hot. So just wanted to say that. I try because of the subjective nature of politics. I try not to engage myself in personality. As in, I think one of the questions was, is HH a good leader? I think the fact that a number of people are going to have different opinions on that, it doesn't render to my specialty of skills, which is quantitative analysis and looking at things for what they are. This is why my subjective assessment can say, hey, Hakainde Hichilema is a good president, but at the same time, I'm busy analyzing what he's doing and I'm critical of some of his actions. And that's just how my mind works. So whenever it's a subjective topic where anybody can be right based on their own assessment, I try to avoid talking about that. Where I think I can add value is, I think there was a question on small businesses. And I am critical of the UPND government on this matter. From a taxation standpoint of view, Ambassador, in the United States, small businesses are the largest employers. So as much as you have all these corporations talking about 40,000, 30,000 employees, I think the professor will agree, just from a statistical standpoint of view, numbers perspective, small businesses are the largest employers. Ambassador, they will beg you in the United States to start a business. If you're about to fall, they will come in with grants. They make sure you succeed. Now, when I look at the small businesses in Zambia, we are not doing that. In fact, your path to failure in Zambia is to try and be an entrepreneur. Because we don't have this exciting infrastructure that supports small businesses from a taxation standpoint of view, Ambassador, from a regulatory standpoint of view. Try to start a business where you need compliance. The fastest thing in Zambia right now, the fastest compliance you can ever do is ZRA. Why? Because that's the government getting money from you. Now, talk about compliance, whether you're trying to open up a health company, you're trying to open up an energy company, try and secure compliance from all these government agencies. Ambassador, it may take you a year to 2 years just for you to get the documents that you need. Mind you, you have reserved $100,000 or you've reserved $50,000 to start a business. Before you can even do anything, you've gone through 2 years worth of compliance paperwork. That $50,000 has lost value. That time you've been holding it in the bank, waiting for your business to start, it has already lost value. You've lost opportunities. So, is the tax regime or just the compliance environment in Zambia good for small businesses? No, my verdict is no. In fact, we are failing small businesses. We talk about unemployment. Ambassador, not everybody is going to be hired by the government and not everybody is going to be hired by these big companies in Zambia. If we facilitated an environment where young people or even retirees who are getting a pension can easily transition into these small businesses. My grandfather retired. He tried to open up a grocery store. He failed miserably because of just so many issues where in your mind you're like, well, what's going on? So to the lady that called in, I don't know if the gentleman, a professor has a different opinion, but I just don't feel we are doing enough for small businesses. We're not encouraging small businesses. We're not providing capital to small businesses. And the most critical part Our compliance requirements for small business are just unnecessary and they are too much. There's no way somebody who's just trying to open up something small should spend 3-4 months trying to be compliant with all these regulatory bodies all over them. And mind you, Ambassador, it is not even a situation where it's like, if I want to expedite my application, there's no framework for that, where they say, hey, if somebody applies for this document, by law, you are required to answer to them in less than 15 days or 30 days. There's nothing like that. So you are spending money going back to the office, going home, going back to the office, just to try a document that you need to go to the second level of regulatory compliance. It's just like it's never going to work for our economy. And we have an opportunity. We have a lot of young people who are not interested in working for companies. They have ideas. They want to build something. That's an investment that we need to make. We need to make their transition to business as easy as possible, and we need to get out of their way. That way they can produce value. They can hire people. I would argue, Ambassador, that the 60% poverty rate, if we forget the mines, forget all these complex issues, just the small businesses, if we facilitated their growth as well as their success, we would be able to reduce our poverty rate from 60% to at least 40%. And there's nothing political about that. It is purely management. Professor, I'm not sure if you have an opinion on.
No, thank you very much. Before Professor come in, gentlemen, it's Sunday. You're supposed to be with your family. I apologize to take you out for this long program. I think let's take some last calls, and then we give you time to wind up. I'm glad that you've already spent 2 hours with us and with our audience, but we have to allow you to rest and be with your family. It's Sunday. Good evening. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
I'm Mwaka. I'm calling from Germany.
Yes, Mwaka.
Yeah, so mine is just a follow-up on the previous caller. He talked about Benwa Mpundu standing as president in the coming elections, in which he says no, but then my thought is that it shouldn't just be about it's okay but we have to be critical about we don't want to make mistakes anymore. So we have to look at who is making sense. What do they want to do for Zambia? You know, it shouldn't just be about but niba nani abo twala abika bwaba lepanga sensi abengesa achinja ama lives yabimana Zambia bali chula. So in all this, we really have to think about the Zambians that are suffering. It shouldn't just be about saying that we split our votes. Balanda bali for kumina finisha for bali for kuchita. Elo nomba twala ba critical no kuchadisa we are panga sensi wabata bali panga nanguni political party I mean independently. As long as they are making sense, as long as they have the Zambian people at heart. My elections. So it shouldn't just be about
Thank you, my dear sister. I think you've made your point. You've been very clear. It's not just about removing Hakainde Hichilema. Your point is very, very clear. Do they have a team? Do they have a program? I think those are things you are asking. Let me just take a few calls so that we quickly give you room to respond and then we close. Hello, good evening. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Good evening, Ambassador. This is Malimba. I'm calling from the United States, Atlanta, Georgia in particular.
Malimba, speak through the phone. You can cancel the speaker. Speak through the phone so that you are louder.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better now.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Honorable Mwamba, for this program. It's really helping out, giving these technocrats a chance to come and air their views on what's going on in our country. I want to talk about two things. First of all, I want to talk about the issues you raised at the beginning of this discussion. You questioned why Zambia has stagnated economically, even though when the British left, they left us a healthy sort of economic state. And you also talked about the importance of our country, the need for our country to focus on taking advantage of how we can raise money through our local avenues. Everybody understands the fact that, first of all, presidents don't run the affairs of a country from an economic point of view. Presidents are there to just delegate. It's the technocrats like Mr. Mutonga there and Professor Kansanshi. These are the people that presidents delegate to run the affairs of nations. And so, that being said, to contribute to your first concern of why did Zambia, if you remember very well at independence, I think Zambia only had like less than maybe 100 graduates at the time, and that's why you see in 1969, Kaunda delegated, the management of the Mulungushi reforms to Andrew Sadanis at the time, a 34-year-old young man who probably didn't even have the expertise from an academic standpoint to manage the sort of responsibility that Kaunda put on his hands. So based on that, we saw sort of like a flawed, management system in the mines, because the way things were run, Zambia as a nation actually neglected to build sort of wealth from within. If you look at the models that the Nigerians, for example, adopted in making sure that they create their own wealth by empowering their own citizens, in Zambia we didn't do that. We went the socialist way because Kaunda at the time was not for the idea of allowing most of these Zambians. If you remember, people that had businesses that were flourishing at the time, Mr. Ephraim Chiwe is one of the examples. He actually, would come and take over your business and buy you out and retain the 51%, because that's just the mindset. So that has really contributed so much to the failure for us as a nation to create inbuilt wealth. In the same way that maybe the Nigerians have done, the Ethiopians have done. They've created billionaires from within their own economies by deliberately enforcing, laws and creating businesses or encouraging businesses. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think my phone was buzzing with something. I don't know what.
Okay, my brother. I think you've made your point. You've made your point. Thank you very much.
It's very important, like you said, honorable.
Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Good evening, Mwamba. My name is Rob. I'm calling from the UK. Good to see you, Kansanshi and Mr. Mtonga on the platform. I just wanted to give just a few information regarding some of the comments. I think a lot of people that are watching on Facebook are not very happy with the mining policy and also the leadership in the country. What I wanted to say is Mr. Mtonga and Mr. Kansanshi. There's people saying that you did back UPN and NHH when he was in opposition, but now his policies are not working. So people, there's some form of imbalance in how you're trying to criticize, especially Mr. Mtonga, but you're not getting to the point to actually criticize them properly. Like you can tell that they are failing in everything. I think the other thing that I wanted to say is, which we focus so much on the mines. I think we know what's happening in the mines. It's leadership and the interest of some of our politicians. We just have to be honest with that. And also with the SMEs, it's small and medium enterprises. If we do not respect that in any economy, you will never have a productive or any growth whatsoever in the economy. So I think what people wanted to say, one of the comments was that, can you apologize for, or can you just probably say something why you supported for change, and that change is not there, but you keep on saying we don't have enough data, but you were able to criticize the opposition, the government then in PF, without having more information. But with this, you keep on saying, oh, the information. So I think there's a little bit of a question mark there. So I think you could say it's poor leadership, and you have to call it the way it is, instead of saying, no, I don't have enough information why they made that decision. But it's a poor decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, Robam from Manchester was doing an online live analysis of how many people are watching and what their comments are. Thank you, Robam, for that. You should do that for me all the time. Hello, good evening. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from. Ba George.
Okay. Kwena lero nshakira fano okutuma sana n'amafoni nakiteka sana omutima okulawunkwa fyonse fye kwena fyamufika fye bwino sana nomba paliko ili ashirimo lyo tufire twaikatapo sana pali tsunami wete ipiki ushe chitwa ipuisha shani ba George bakateka besu tabomfwa ku bantu tabapo kama advice elio tabarombo obwelero nga barufyanya elo omuntu tabafwayo omuntu kubakinta bafwayo abana mbawana ifintu ifiri mu kyalo tafiwe memwali ba load shedding mwali bemfimfi amalaiti air control economy so bali kata kumalaiti abantu bakwata obuntungwa tabaye kwata maisoseri abantu kwa bali bekata pamala abantu bendane nsala so abyana Zambia mwaishi byakale n'abali pali ino nshita n'abapusana collector na yaire chinja because ichalo chali ponenwa n'obusanso obukulu so pali ino nshita mutu wakweko busheni ne chitwa bomfya inshira inshi yakweba ati twafunya po umuntu pakwe bati mwe bantu mwe bakwete ko mutima waku tware charo pantanshi mwakwata platform badile longa chakwe bati umuntu taserelepo icharoko chireya nachibipa so twafweniko
bamunkonge natasha sana bamunkonge. I think now bamyumfwa. Let me take two last calls. Hello, good evening. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
I'm going to stay anonymous, sorry, if that's okay.
Yes, anonymous.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a question. So we've seen, or a lot of people have seen and been saying positive comments about Burkina Faso. I'm hoping everyone else has been following. So they've had an interesting transformation, like in a space of 2 years or just over 2 years. Is there anything that you've observed that we can learn from them that we can apply to Zambia? That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Let me take the last caller, Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is a model example. Africans, especially young people, are very excited about it. What can we learn from them? Hello, good evening. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Yeah, this is Stanley calling from Zambia.
Stanley, speak up.
Calling from Chipata.
Yes, Stanley, please
Hello.
make your contribution. Are you there? Oh, we've lost Stanley. I think network issue. Let me take the last call. Good evening. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Hey, good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening.
This is Anonymous calling you from Houston, Texas.
Yes, Anonymous. Make your contributions.
Yes, my quick contribution to everything that has been said. By the way, kudos to the program. You are bringing people who are really outlining serious issues that affect our country. And I just want to say thank you for bringing these matters out to the public. The first thing that I want to say is we have the formula wrong in Zambia because we think the government will solve all the problems that the general citizenry has. The major role of the government is to be a regulator. And I think this is one of the issues that George actually touched on when he was going through his soliloquy, explaining some of the issues. Secondly, the government has to ensure that there is an even playing field for all participants, especially local participants in the economy, because the government exists for the local people. Thirdly, the government has to ensure that there is enough funding for businesses to thrive. And from the model that we've been using in Zambia, everything seems to end at State House. And that's why we seem to be stuck, in the past, because we don't seem to be going anywhere. Socialism has been proposed, but to no avail. I believe for us to start moving forward as a country, we need to disassociate ourselves from the political mindset where we think all the answers are coming from State House or from the politicians. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last call, and I'm going to invite you. Oh, there are so many calls. Just hold on. This one might be different because I think he's calling from Japan. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
I will not say my name.
That's okay. I just saw the country code and I thought is someone who doesn't call regularly. Make your contribution.
Yes, I'm calling from Japan, East Asia. And I just wanted to make a comment on the people that when we were growing up in secondary, we were told about the three arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And we were told that Parliament makes laws, and then the judiciary, they implement those laws. Can you just please explain what it means by now if a judgment is passed and then Parliament does not respect the what the judges or the judiciary courts say? Should it also be vice versa in an event that the laws are passed in Parliament and then the judiciary refused to follow the laws that have been passed?
Good. Wonderful contribution there. I think it's very clear about the independence of wings of government. So before I throw you to Robert Moore was watching, says he was watching with using a chat GPT, which is an AI tool for podcasting that he was using on Chat GPT. He says, this is a summary, and he has just sent it to me. Let me just read it to you. Here is a summary analysis of the viewer comments using the app he was using that helped with Chat GPT. Number one, public frustration is boiling. Many viewers expressed dissatisfaction with Zambia's economic states, power cut, overtaxation, and poverty were repeatedly mentioned. People are tired of theories and want solutions that touch daily life. Then it picks some quotes. Load shedding is killing small businesses. Another one, too much taxes for starters doing small scale business. And people doing small scale business is very expensive. Strong rejection of political elitism. There is clear resentment towards opposition figures who speak in high-level terms without connecting with grassroots issues. Some viewers mocked some panelists as being out of touch. Someone who failed to run in Ghana constituency, how will he run the country? I think someone, ChatGPT is a bit confused sometimes. It is arising from a comment on Binwa Mpundu. Skepticism towards business-style governance. Some viewers pushed back against the idea that Zambia should be run like a business, warning that this mindset ignores the social and cultural consequences of government and the realities of poverty on the people. Government should not be run as a business, quote. That is where HH and Kasonso get it wrong. Oh, you are cited, Professor. ChatGPT. Growing regret and betrayal among voters. There is a ton of regret from many citizens who supported the current leadership led by President Hichilema, now feeling abandoned, misled, and left. They are turning their anger not just on the government, but on those that endorsed it. Some of the panelists quote, owe Zambia an apology because they promoted leaders who have since taken us to this crisis. ChatGPT wants you to apologize for supporting leaders that... last one, hidden opportunities for clear thinkers. A lot of people praise the program that you've elevated the debate to this level of seriousness. And some callers, again, were angry. They welcome the commentaries on sound policy ideas that have been communicated, such as enforcing local banking, mining revenue, and empowering businesses. Why don't we demand mines deposit sales into local banks so that we benefit from Forex? One quote. Small businesses are the largest employers in the United States, says another quote, probably from you, George.
Mm-hmm.
Final takeaways. Anger is widespread and the people want practical solutions, not political theater. Power, energy, Forex and tax policies appear to be the hottest issues that must be attended to. There's an opening for new leadership, but it must prove it's different from those from the past, not just another round or cycle of politicians. Then messaging must be first not to technocrats, but speak to the ordinary viewers listening. Well, good lessons. Robin, please do this very often for me so that I can read out the analysis. We'll start with Professor. You can answer any of the questions that has come up. Then we'll end with George, and then I will close. Professor.
Okay. Let's start with the question that came up about leaving the future generations with debt. That's very regrettable. But unfortunately, for every business and every company, even every country, the future generations are going to be saddled with some form of debt. Let me give an example. Here in the United States, there is money they take out of my check that goes to pay for the old people. So you prevent poverty. That's a debt I am paying, which I have nothing to do with. Yeah. So that is inevitable for every generation to be left with some form of debt, but it must be manageable debt. About Binwa for president, I like Binwa a lot and he's an incredible guy. But what I'm looking for, but what I'm looking for, if you are going to appeal to me, you must demonstrate that you're an upgrade on HH. If you are below grade, HH, I will not endorse anybody. But so I'm contradicting says, and how we can empower them. It is not only until this year, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, that I saw the president and other people, they established this organization that is going to have received funding of $300 million over a period of 10 years. I like some of that effort, but it's a joker type of program because the small business type has to be heavily invested in, even more than the money they are sending to CDF. It has to be sent to small businesses. If you power the economy like that, if you reduce the amount of imports you're bringing in the country, Zambia is going to be a better place. Someone commented about energy and investments in energy. I like the investments in energy, but the investments in energy that HH is doing, they are those investments that are empowering foreign investors. So they are based on foreign direct investment. And then that energy is for export into other countries. This is a government that has failed to lit up the country. They have failed to give us the energy we need to power up our economy. So whatever they are talking about economic growth is, it's a failed management team. Then Bamalimba, Batsabikapo problem ya kwa kaunda from the past. One of the problems to kwata Muzambia kubika kwa batutu kuntanshi. So abalefu okuyimirira ni fishi basambirira ni kwisa basambirira ensamu kibali kibokusova tatulefwaya abashikwete ensamu shi. Yeah, you know, they're taking away of the socialist way of thinking where we have to impose monies and on people who what they need is an opportunity so they can find the money, but we throw the money there. We cannot do that. But Robert Mbachimchitako mentioned Pari small business and support for HH in 2021, whatever to offer apology. Awe, kusani kwa baropa. Ero na chimiewa ina jimiero mewa. Ine, nalifa kufinyapo balungu. So in those days, it was anybody but Lungu. And it turned out to be HH. So HH cannot go to the bank and say, no, this check was written by Kayamba Kasonso and it is to me. No. Eloba Mkonge, Bachanda Pama, at President Tawa advised. So, if the country needs to have advisory councils for every major productive field. Yes, load shedding is shutting down the country. The country cannot improve without electricity in the nation. Yeah, so no free speech in the country. Yeah. Hello, Bambiba Anonymous, but that Burkina Faso what an example. Mufiremo have careful. If you analyze if you had AI generated messages from Burkina Faso. In area for what ni Russia disinformation. Russian disinformation. You know, we have to understand the global economy and the global world. There are these big powers who are competing in the internet space. So in that space, some of what they're doing is simply to take stuff and try to promote one side. So the thing that is happening in Burkina Faso is Russian backed. I'm not saying it's wrong for us to support Russia, but we have to be aware that if it's Russia disinformation, we cannot take that as an example to develop our economy because we don't even have products in our country that are based on technologies from their country. So they can't be our model. We love them. But it's creating the level playing field within the economy for people, for participants by unanimous network access. Yeah, in terms of funding and other things, if you are having only 300 million, you are not going to be able to have that. So let me give my closing remarks now. My closing remarks today are about the urgent need for good governance in the Republic of Zambia. We need governance. We are lacking good governance in Zambia because of three principles. There's no transparency, there's no accountability, and there's no inclusivity. So what we need is to foster economic development and social progress. Yes, we are doing transactional leadership where you fix the debt, but again, you go and borrow some. Also, some people are not understanding that. Even if you are borrowing concessional loans, that gives you more time. Yeah, but because you are trying to fix a problem, but you are looking like you're jumping in the same problem. So there's no social progress there. Corruption remains one of the greatest obstacles to development, and that's what is happening in Zambia. There is a lot of corruption, and we can't keep this country and run this country on those corrupt bases. And then the human rights issue. The human rights issue, how are people being taken care of? Are the rights of people being respected? If there is a deficit in that area, then abantu will take away. And then we want to talk about sustainable development, development that can be sustained from our own resources. If more of our resources are going to benefit foreign investors and foreign people coming to our country, then that type of development is not sustainable. There is no difference between equity instruments and debt instruments. In the long term, if the money is going to come from outside of the country, it's money that's going to be forked out of the Zambian economy, whilst we haven't moved the poverty line for the people. We are using foreigners to steal from our people, and that is bad governance. Further, we have a critical role to play in promoting good governance as citizens. So we must come on these platforms like Emmanuel Mwamba Verified, tulelanda kupachalo cheso, usalanda. Then finally, there is need for good governance in Zambia, not just as a call to action, but it's a plea for justice, equity, and progress. I will mention it here. What is Shimbakamburi doing in jail when the very things they want against us are the ones that they are using? And there is nepotism going on in the country. The very things that Shimbakamburi mentioned. Why is Shimbakamburi in jail? We need justice, equity, and progress. Together, let us champion the values that will shape our nation's future, ensuring that Zambia remains a land of opportunity and hope for all its citizens. The journey may not be easy, but with unwavering commitment and collective action, we can achieve a Zambia that reflects the aspirations of its people. Thank you for inviting me to participate, and thank you for interacting with the Honorable George Mutonga.
George, it was your show today, and we are glad that, and it will not be your last show, unfortunately, George. Remember, we've promised ourselves to come to particular sectors or a topic we pick where we have more information, because we don't want to be academic in approach. We have to get examples that are real in Zambia, and then discuss them of how things can be better. Because if we are just a mere academic platform, people will say, it's sounding like they're at school. We need to get the realities of what's happening to our country. And we do not take it for granted, George, that you accepted to come to this forum. So you can answer any of the questions from any of the callers and then give us your closing remarks.
Yes. First and foremost, obviously, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing us to discuss. Ambassador, you and I can agree to this. I've been a champion of these types of discussions, even when PF was in power. I do believe these types of exchanges allow people to come out and say what they want. And, leadership should be able to look at these programs. Like, every time somebody called and said anonymous, it hurt my feelings, because we shouldn't live in a society where people are talking about their country and it's anonymous. I don't think that's right. I've never felt it's right. I will never feel it's right. In fact, one of the reasons why I left UPND was because promises towards freedom, promises towards free speech haven't gotten to where I thought they would be. And it's an area that I'm never going to compromise for anybody. I've been on this program, and pretty much I've heard everybody who disagrees with me speak intelligently, provide alternatives, provide solutions. If I'm advocating for a policy, I should be able to be brought in front of people that disagree with me, and they have to poke holes into my logic. The best that I can do is consider what they are saying. So, Ambassador, anything that we can do to promote this level of freedom, anything that we can do to promote this level of interaction, I will always support. So thank you very much for having me. Now, in terms of what was discussed and what the callers raised, remember, when it comes to the constitutional issues or legal issues, I am not necessarily an expert in that. Obviously, I do have an opinion on these matters, but my opinion is just general. So regardless of who's in power or who's not in power, I've always advocated for independent government institutions. In fact, even right now, I'm an advocate for laws that reduce the power of the executive branch. I feel the Zambian president is overwhelmingly powerful, beyond measure. You have a level of control that I feel renders the entire system incapable of making decisions that the president doesn't agree with. So and again, this is a system issue. It has always been like that in Zambia, and it's something that I feel will never really give us an opportunity to progress. Because if the right decision disagrees with the president, because of the power of the president, that right decision will never be implemented, because the president can be wrong. They are just as human as anybody else. I don't think them being president automatically gives them a superior intelligence. No, this is why Zambia, there are 20 million people, you see. So I may not be equipped intellectually or academically to discuss the law to that extent, but as a general philosophy, I do believe in extreme separation of powers between the branches. They need to do what they're supposed to do and not interfere with each other. But in terms of the true discussion of this program, which is the economy, I can speak to things that I feel are not going correct. I can't speak to the idea of comparative economic assessment, meaning that if you obviously support a different political party, you will find reasons to say that the UPND government is not doing what they're supposed to do. And it's very difficult to come to a conclusion on those types of matters. So I generally avoid those types of discussions, because I can then start bringing out a laundry list of what I feel UPND has done, what government has done, what HH has done, and then compare things to what PF didn't do. And I don't think for the purposes of what I think Ambassador is trying to achieve, it adds any value, because at that point we're just doing chochise. But I can speak to certain things, right? Example, overtaxation of small businesses. I think that's a critical point, because it is obvious. We can see that. And the idea is we agree that regardless of what leadership is in power, the level of taxation in Zambia for small businesses is just problematic. People can't succeed. Like, you have a lot of people engaged in businesses and they want to start businesses, but I mentioned certain tiers, right? I talked about compliance. Just trying to be compliant in Zambia is already a transactional cost. That's one. Second, this level of taxation where there is not even programs, because there are cases where you're supposed to pay taxes and you fail to pay taxes because you were in a liquidity crunch. No programs where the government or the ZRA can say, hey, okay, we know you owe us 100,000 kwacha. Let's give you a payment plan. These are procedural changes or administrative changes that can actually say that, hey, we want you to succeed. Because what's the point of overtaxing somebody or overtaxing a small business that they run out of business, and now you have 5 people that have lost jobs, that can't take their kids to school, that can't feed their children? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I do feel the UPND government needs to do a better job in approaching small businesses with the sensitivity that these individuals are hiring people, and the people that they hire are feeding families, they are taking people to school, and they are spending in the economy. That's one. The second point that I feel is extremely critical and is real, it's this idea of, I think a lot of callers are are in tune to the idea that we may look good on paper. And the professor and I, as individuals in this world, we can throw out KPIs, we can throw out all these metrics, right? But what exactly is the value of those metrics to the daily lives of Zambians? If we are arguing that we've elected leaders or individuals to improve the lives of Zambians, Ambassador, I can generate a GDP of 7% for the next 10 years, and 60% of Zambians can still be in poverty. So the argument that a mere increase in GDP is not reflective of the lives of Zambians is a legitimate argument, and it's something that we need to hold our government and our leaders accountable. Yes, the economy is changing in this framework. Yes, you may agree that the government is doing a good job on debt, but the end result, the final result of what we want are KPIs that focus on the improvement of the people in Zambia. That 60% poverty level, Ambassador, is a critical KPI. As long as we have that 60%, everything is, for all intended purposes, meaningless. We can juggle, we can build financial models, we can do all these things. But Ambassador, when individuals are coming in and they want to lead our country, we don't say that you are going to increase GDP by 7%. That's not why we elect them. We say that you are going to do all those things, and in exchange for those things, you are going to change the lives of Zambians. That's our critical point in terms of assessment. So the question should always be, regardless of what's going on in the country, are Zambians better off today than they were a year ago or 5 years ago? And that is an assessment it's something we need to, obviously, again, people would have different opinions, but I think it should always be a consistent theme. Yes, the roads are built. Yes, this is done. But as an aggregate, are the most vulnerable individuals in our countries better off today than they were 10 years ago, 5 years ago? This question can even be asked 20 years from now. We always have to make sure that we don't even miss our punches when holding our government. The president that I support, we have to hold him accountable, because I didn't support the president and I don't support the president right now simply for aesthetics. It's not because, I want HH in power. No, I want things to be done. And this is the man that's in power to help me see the things that I want to see in my country change. So I will always hold my president accountable. So that gap between those people that have money and the people that don't have money, it's a big concern for me. It should continue being a concern for other people. Now, when it comes to load shedding or currency issues, I always beg, Ambassador, that we become a little bit more bipartisan in addressing some of these problems. Because, Ambassador, some of these discussions, Ambassador, you and I would have had the same discussions when you were working for President Frederick Chiluba. You and I would have had the same discussions when you were ambassador to South Africa during PF. I don't feel everything is political. I don't feel everything is about who's in power. And if we agreed that there are certain elements of our society that are national concerns, I expect a level of bipartisanship when it comes to load shedding, energy issues, because these have always been issues all the way back from MMD. And I don't think it's fair. And again, remember, I said the same thing in 2015 when President Edgar Lungu was elected. UPND was all over load shedding. No, you can do this, you can do this. Why is the president not doing it? And I begged in 2015. I think it was 2015 he got elected, and then 2016, I think the first few months after he was elected in 2016, I begged and I said, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a problem that you can put on President Edgar Lungu. This is an infrastructure problem. If we as a nation grouped ourselves, understood that, okay, People that need to do politics can do politics in certain areas, but there are certain issues that we are all going to benefit if we worked together. And I feel load shedding, energy issues, fuel issues, these are issues that deserve a bipartisan approach, meaning all opposing side and ruling side come together, bring the best minds. Let's create a plan that's going to benefit our country. But I am sympathetic to the public frustrations in terms of what's going on in Zambia. And those are legitimate frustrations. And we have, I think all of us, it is our duty to hold our country as well as our leaders accountable for the frustrations that we are receiving. The same way I have had my frustrations when it comes to the cyber laws. I spent the whole week just being frustrated, which led to a resignation because, Ambassador, you and others shouldn't have to be outside of the country to demand accountability from our leaders. People should never, ever, a Zambian should never have to discuss issues about their country anonymously. It pains me to be on a program where we are discussing ideas and people feel they need to hide who they are because something may happen to them. And Professor, I do appreciate your concern on transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. I do believe, so, and again, it was right for the callers to say, well, George, when PF was in power, you were quick to denounce corruption, and yet you are not quick to say what it is when you say Mopani or Kansanshi. Is there any corruption involved? And I do admit that, but at the same time, the government, you see, I don't work in government to speak for them. The only thing that we can ever discuss and try to say is this: if you are not transparent on any deal, if you are not following the procedures laid out by law, making sure if a deal needs to be approved by parliament, it gets approved. If you're not doing that, the automatic conclusion is that the deal is not correct. I don't need to have all the details to see from the outside if these deals are not going the way they're supposed to be. The same way I never took time to ask for information when the fire trucks were bought for $1 million. I was concerned because when I look at what I'm expecting, it's not adding up. So I do believe the Zambian government should be more transparent and provide more information on some of the issues that a lot of us are interested in. Accountability. Ambassador, I've always supported accountability. I've always asked for people to be held accountable. I think, you were previewed to a lot of my concerns when PF was in power. But even right now under UPND, I don't feel we've yet arrived at that stage. One case is, you tell me that there are health issues in the country, people are stealing drugs and all that stuff. And then you say you've arrested 54 people. I don't know their names. I don't know who they are. I don't know what the role they played. I don't know anything about them. What level of transparency is that if you are a government committed to holding people accountable? And remember, the shift from PF. So I'm not going to say that I was okay with corruption in PF, and then I come back to UPND and say, oh, UPND is doing something and let me just ignore. No, I'm absolutely against corruption, regardless of whether PF is in power or UPND is in power. And I do feel the UPND government needs to do more to hold those people who are corrupt accountable. The last thing Professor said was inclusivity. And I agree with him. We need to include people, not only just from a leadership standpoint of view, but from an economic standpoint of view. The purpose of this program was issues concerning economics. Ambassador, we are not running an inclusive economy. We may be hopeful that at some point it's going to be inclusive, but no, we are not running an inclusive economy. We are creating policies that are blanket, right? If I create a policy and say, well, companies should do this, the ability of a small business to cover and be compliant under that policy is extremely different from a corporation that's hiring 10,000 employees. So from that vantage point, political inclusivity is a given, but we have to take it further and ask ourselves, are we being inclusive when it comes to the economy? And again, you don't need a lot of research on this. You simply go in any area of Zambia and ask, do you feel included in our country? Do you feel your views are included in the way our leaders should behave? Do you feel right now, if I ask Zambians, if you worked hard, extremely hard, do you feel you have a chance to succeed in our country? And Ambassador, the chances are that a majority of them feel that if they worked hard, they did everything by the books, they don't feel confident that they will succeed. And that's how I'm going to end my points. And, again, my goal has always been to push the leaders, and I did this under PF, to push leaders in a direction where I feel they should be going. The same thing for UPND. I am not going to shy away from the problems that Zambians are facing and pretend that things are okay. No, but I will leverage those issues and say, guys, this is the direction we need to go to. And again, Ambassador, this will happen for the next president. It will continue happening for the next president. Our goal is to always hold our leaders accountable for a better Zambia for all. I've never heard anybody who's come on this program or who speaks about politics and says, our goal is to steal from Zambians. I think all of us legitimately want a better Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. I'm so grateful, and thank you for your time on such a busy schedule and for allocating so much time. And to our dear audience, thank you very much. And to those callers who are still calling, by the way, I'm so sorry that we can only take a number of calls. I'm trying to devise a management way of this call so that we take in as many as possible. Because even when we give you 1 minute, you still take 10 minutes, 5 minutes. But we have to find a way in which to balance the interest of every other caller. I thank you for calling. You make the program, and for the panelists that came today and yesterday, I'm so grateful. Tomorrow we have a special broadcast. There's a matter in South Africa where a trial will begin. Remember, the state is pursuing the issue that the remains of the late president, Zambia's 6th president, should be repatriated to Zambia and be buried there. The family, for various reasons, have said they wish to bury the president in South Africa. And now the Zambian government took the family to a South African court, the Gauteng High Court, Pretoria Division, where a trial will begin. When they last sat, the court had said they would hope that the period would be used to negotiate and resolve the matter so that the issues of the remains of the late president will be resolved. So we'll just run special commentary tomorrow to understand and update ourselves what will have happened in court and where a ruling is expected on 18th of August. Tomorrow is just trial. So the Attorney General will present his case and the family's lawyer will rebut that case. The judges will hear the matter and the judgment will be on 18th. So tomorrow we'll review what will have happened in court. So tune in. So God bless you. Thank you to Professor Kasonso and to George and Mutonga for according me this opportunity. God bless you. See you tomorrow.
So, folks can't ride your back unless your back is bent. The poet says, is this your back that is bent? Martin Luther says, folks can't ride your back unless your back is bent. So we've got to straighten up our backs Because when folks straighten up their backs, you know they are going somewhere. And so we were here today to begin to strengthen up the first few faltering steps in the direction of building a buoyant, a resilient, a united, a proud Africa. And so we met in Lusaka today to reaffirm, to deepen, to broaden a relationship between Botswana and Zambia. A relationship that must translate into concrete deliverables that must transform the lives and livelihoods of the multitudes in our countries. A relationship that must serve as an exemplar for the rest of the continent. Call on the rest of Africa to straighten up our backs.
Leero bwakya bakamba mu kyalo ky'esu ekya Zambia ekyaweka Njoy. Abantu baafa bakamba kulya mu nfumbwe. More than 20 people balebe epati ni babiri. Bagamba. Fish to Arufyanya. People have died. Mumino yabakapokola. The police killing people. Why? In the same government bagamba. Abductions have happened. Bagamba. If you're not with them, it's either you're dead or you're in prison. This government, you're going to change big man. Fish to Arufyanya bakakubika mu office. Fish to Arufyanya. Why me? Missing. Achani Ruba Mwacho and Dizona. Where is why me? HH, tell us with your government, where is why me? Give us why me. Justice for why me, big man. Wachila mo HH. Wala tupwisha bega kutupwisha bagamba. Katwale kyo kulanda big man. Oh, you think? Maina watata. Zambia tuwasevana.